7%, 8,239 of the COVID-19 positive cases are all local transmissions. Of concern is the increase in the number of new cases detected from 281 recorded in week 46 to 594 in week 47 following the reopening of schools. In order to control the spread of COVID-19 in schools, the following measures are being implemented. That is, intensification of the supervision and inspection of boarding schools facilities, providing potable water to 48 schools in Bulawayo, which are in dire need of the essential commodity. Then also strengthening of public health response measures in affected schools. We need also to support all educational institutions to fully implement COVID-19 standard operating procedures and implementing of COVID-19 protective and preventative measures in the social spaces beyond school premises. However, the media is urged to report responsibly on the situation prevailing in primary and secondary schools and seek information from our minister, from the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education and Health and Child Care on any issues of interest. This will avoid the undue alarm and despondence caused by the uncoordinated reportage which has been witnessed since the reopening of schools. Cabinet also wishes to report that the reopening of the country's borders has been effected as scheduled starting today, 1st December 2020. On the number of people allowed at gatherings, Cabinet notes that the different numbers specified for various types of gatherings has caused general confusion and violations of restrictions. Accordingly, henceforth, the number of people permitted at any gathering is restricted to 100, irrespective of what the gathering is being convened for. Then coming to tourism sector. In the tourism sector, government notes the need to promote business activities in the sector, especially given the anticipated increase of tourists and returning citizens as the country's borders reopen. Opening hours of restaurants would therefore be extended from the current 1830 hours closing time to 2000 hours closing time. Restaurant operators are called upon to strictly observe these hours of operation, ensure COVID-19 prevention protocols and guidelines are observed, which will be strictly enforced. Similarly, those patronizing the restaurants should ensure that they adhere to curfew hours. Cabinet takes this opportunity to call upon all citizens to strictly adhere to COVID-19 protective and preventative guidelines, protocols, and measures in order to arrest the surge in confirmed COVID-19 cases. Enforcement of the measures and communication of same is being intensified, while schools will remain open only if they adhere to the standard operating procedures. The Cabinet received a report on the pre-planting producer prices for maize, traditional grains, soya beans, and cotton. Cabinet considered and approved pre-planting producer prices for maize, traditional grains, soya beans, and cotton for the 2021 agricultural marketing season, this was presented by the Minister of Lands, Agriculture, Water and Rural Settlement, Dr. Masuka. Details on the actual prices will soon be announced by the Grain Marketing Board, GMB. However, suffice to say that the producer prices ensure farmer viability, incentivize the producers to grow these strategic crops, and that they are based on a cost of production plus 15% return on investment model. In order to promote the production of traditional grains, a 20% premium on the price of maize is given to farmers who grow the crops. Then Cabinet also received a report. This is a progress report on the summer production season. This update was given by the Minister of Lands, Agriculture and Water and Rural Settlement. Cabinet noted progress registered in the following government programs: the Fumbuza program, the National Enhanced Crop Productivity Program, which is either called Command or Smart Agriculture Program, the Presidential Cotton Programming, Tobacco Sector Program, Livestock Growth Plan, and the Mechanization Support Program. Regarding the Fumbuza program, Cabinet was informed that households supported under this program had increased from 1.8 million to 2.2 million. All the 2.2 million families enrolled had been automatically entered in the Fumvudza competition for all the crops. A total of 2,139,275 households had been trained on Fumvudza, and additionally, the Zunderamambo concept had been revived and inputs are being distributed to 286 chiefs. On National Enhanced Crop Productivity Program, the nation is advised that 285,440 hectares had been registered by 11,829 farmers, and 43,067 hectares of soybean on the targeted 60,000 hectares was registered by 69,932 farmers. The farmers had received the following inputs out of the targeted 290,000 hectares of maize seed, and then soya seed and soybeans, also in basal fertilizers, soya blend and top dressing fertilizer. Then pertaining to the Presidential Cotton Program, Cabinet approved cotton Fumvudza pack comprising 6 kg seed, 80 kg basal fertilizer, 40 kg top dressing, and the prerequisite herbicides and chemicals, reducing the seed allocation from 20 kg seed to match fertilizers provided. Then concerning preparedness for the 2020-2021 season in the tobacco sector, Cabinet noted that a total area of 28,292 hectares had been planted as at 25th November 2020, compared to 27,181 hectares which were planted in the previous season by this time. Furthermore, 127,231 growers had registered for 2020-21 season, compared to 139,606 growers who were registered during the same season. Under the livestock growth, the following programs were launched on 20th November 2020. That is the Presidential Blitz Tick Grease Scheme, Deep Tank Rehabilitation, Genetic Improvement and borehole drilling. During the launch, 34 bulls were distributed to 34 chiefs in Matabeleland South. The distribution of the targeted 1 million packs for the 1 million cattle owning households has commenced. Meanwhile, of the 474 tractors expected under the Belarus facility, 450 tractors have now been received for the distribution to farmers through designated banks. I want to thank you for listening. That is the post-briefing from Cabinet today. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Now we come to the time we are giving to you, members of the media, to ask questions. We give you a first session, 4 questions, and the second session, if necessary, another 4. So, any volunteers? Yes, please.
Thank you, Chief Sec. My name is Blessed Mhlanga from Heart and Soul TV and Radio. My question goes to the task force on COVID. You said that schools will remain open and there's intensification of monitoring and provision of potable water. But I do understand that some schools which had people that tested positive for COVID-19 are due to close after 14 days of quarantine of those people, in what they are saying is decongesting the schools, and they will be left with just examination writing classes. Now, is this government policy that these schools have to be closed, or that non-examination classes will be sent back home? Is this government policy? You also you also spoke about citizens being urged to strictly adhere to COVID-19 regulations. Now, I want to understand in terms of messaging, when pictures of ministers clearly not observing COVID-19 regulations are posted on social media, and cabinet ministers sitting here and ask the same from citizens. In terms of messaging, I've never seen the president, for instance, not even once, appear in public, for whatever reason, without his mask. I've never seen. I've actually even seen him observing social distancing in public gatherings from his wife as a messaging issue. But the ministers are doing something totally different from what the president is doing. So, are we going to see an apology or a justification? Thank you.
Okay. Any other volunteer this session? Yes, please.
My name is Zimbabwe Gvt from the Daily News. My question is directed to the task force again, in terms of the numbers of people who can gather, as well as the opening hours of restaurants being adjusted upwards. Given the number of cases that are continuously increasing, and then we actually increase the number of people who can gather and the time that they can, restaurants can open, are we not further exposing ourselves? Is it not the complacence that the government has been talking about?
Okay. Any other volunteer? You have your hand up? No, you are doing something else.
That's it.
I'll give you another minute, otherwise we'll move on to having responses. So it looks like
There are no questions. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chief Secretary, and I want to thank you for your questions. Blessed Mchanga was very passionate, and I've got questions to the task force. One is about on the COVID-19 outbreak, of course, and the issue of schools, which you are saying they will remain open. And his question is this government policy that non-exams should be sent home? I think the Minister of Primary and Secondary Education, I think it's an issue which he can handle. So, Minister, if I can give you that question.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Blessing. I know of no school that is closed because of COVID-19 in terms of examinations and lessons that are taking place. So we are continuing with our examinations. In fact, they started today, grade 7 and Form 4s. But we look at each school as a case, depending on what is taking place at a particular school. We will do the best we can to protect the children, to protect the learners, to protect the teachers and staff members. Indeed, even to protect the parents and guardians who may be visiting. But all those who are supposed to write their exams are going to write their exams. And we have not closed the school because of COVID-19 at all. Maybe Blessing indulge me by giving me a name, and we cannot respond and find out what exactly what you're doing. But otherwise, especially now when we have 93% of learners are attending and 87% of teachers are at schools. So the coming back of teachers to schools to work, for those who have gone on strike, for them to come back to school to work is assisting us in terms of managing the whole learning and examination environment at schools. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister Matema, for that answer to Blessed Mhlanga. And your second question, Blessed, is actually about the adherence to the measures. We really need, as a nation, to adhere to the measures which has been put in place, the preventative and precautionary measures which have been put in place by World Health Organization, by our government, and we continue to tell our nation, and we've done very well as a nation. We want to continue to do that so that at least we control the spread of COVID-19. The issues which you talked about of ministers who were at a dinner, who were taking a picture, obviously this was a very personal dinner, small gathering where few friends were just coming for dinner, and there was social distancing. There was also, all controls were done there in terms of booth, the walk-in booth for disinfectant. All that was done, and so that's what I can tell you, that as ministers we are very, very much concerned about the reducing containing the measure, the spread of this disease, and we are doing everything to make sure that this country will not fall into other countries where a lot of people have died from this disease. As a government, we will continue to make sure, we will continue to send the message out there to make sure that our people adhere to measures, to preventative and precautionary measures. Then Mugoweta Firenyika is from Daily News, and he wanted to know on the report which we have just given on the Zimbabwe's response to COVID-19. Honorable Minister, who is the chairperson, he wants to know that you seem to be relaxing more, or to go up on numbers of people who can gather, and also on the issue of, there were two things, and this person is actually saying, are we not exposing ourselves to this COVID-19 pandemic?
Thank you, Tafirenyika. Thank you, Tafirenyika, for those very important concerns that you raise. And as government, I think we have performed very well since the President declared the disaster in March. And as I have often said, that whatever decisions we make, we are guided by experts. And I want to state that the Ministry of Health and Child Care consulted the Experts Advisory Committee regarding the cases in particular with the reopening of schools, where we have seen the increase. And I want to say that the information that we received was that in some schools there were some identified cases, and most of them were asymptomatic.
Yes.
And for that reason, they were quarantined in those schools. So they acted as quarantine centers. The figures that you are referring to compare very well with the figures that we had in July and August 2020, which we were at the peak then. I know the figures are increasing, reason being that we are also increasing our testing. And it's one of the reasons that because of the reopening of schools now, we have had to increase on that. So it's an exaggeration, really, to blow the situation out of proportion. The expert advice that we have received is that we should continue with our public health response measures, which includes infection prevention and control, particularly in the affected schools, and we should strengthen those response measures. And that we should support all education institutions to fully implement the COVID-19. So the cases that are being reported basically are coming from that sector. Yes, we are concerned about the opening of restaurants, but I want to say that the information that we have gathered from the experts is that there is they observe social distancing in restaurants, and as a result, they've been running losses. All the task forces are being adhered with, and we will continue ensuring that proper monitoring and expert advice is adhered to. I thank you.
I want to thank you very much, Honorable Chair of the Task Force on COVID-19 outbreak. Chief Secretary, I would like to give you an opportunity to get the second round of questions.
Thank you. Second round. Any volunteers? Yes, please.
My name is Kuzanai Kerele from 260 Church. My question is directed to the Minister of Lands, Dr. Masuka. I just wanted to find out on the prospect, what are the prospects of a good harvest in 2021, because I'm asking this on the backdrop of some interactions I've had with some farmer unions who are still complaining about their lack of preparedness with regards to expensive inputs. I mean those who are outside the presidential farming input scheme, they were raising those concerns. And maybe the second part of my question, also maybe on the preparedness, about a fortnight ago, I think you hinted on possible repossession of idle land. I just wanted to find out what's the progress on this. Thank you.
Okay. Second volunteer. Yes, please.
Thank you, Chief Sec. I do believe today is World AIDS Day. I just wanted the Acting Minister of Health we do understand that because of COVID challenges, there has been also a shortage of ARVs. Now, what is government doing to ensure that that shortage, that gap, is dealt with? I also, since the Minister of Finance is not in, I'm not sure who will take this, but we have seen that our banks are now demanding IMTT taxes in retrospect from 1 November 2018 to 1 November 2020. I just wanted to find out if this is government policy to get taxes in retrospect from clients in this harsh economy.
Blessed, sorry to stop you. I'm sorry. This was not discussed in cabinet, but you're free to call the Minister of Finance and Economic Development anytime, and I'm sure he'll be very happy to explain this to you. If the banks are demanding that ITT taxes in retrospect, whether it's government policy, the minister will be able to answer you. So, thank you.
And, okay, thank you for that. And lastly, I want to do a follow-up. I understand that the minister has noted that it was a family gathering, friends and everything. But my question was in terms of messaging. What message does that send? Because we can also then gather and say we are a small family and also not have masks on. The last time I asked a question here, that police were arresting people who were driving in their cars when you're in your private car without a mask. And they were insisting that you wear a mask, even if you are alone in that car. So I'm asking in terms of messaging, those who have seen those pictures and have not had the opportunity to hear this explanation of that it was a small family, what messaging is government sending through those images?
Any other volunteer? Yes, please.
My name is Zimbabwe Gvt from the Yard. My question is directed to the Minister of Home Affairs.
Yes.
I wanted to hear, following the reopening of borders today, what is in the situation like? Have we managed to contain this? Was it in the situation like the borders got off the
Last volunteer? Yes, please.
Thank you, Takuchi Ambaka from Zimbabwe TV. Still with the borders, are people expected to also produce certificates, as is the case with airports? Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't get you, Taku.
Are travelers expected to produce certificates, as is the case with the airports?
So that's that.
Very good. Okay.
Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief Secretary. Kudzai 263 chart. The question is directed to the Minister of Lands, Dr. Masuka. What are the prospects of a good harvest? He says he has been interacting with farmers who are actually raising issues about the expensive inputs, and so they are not ready. And then maybe you can also deal with the second question, which he was talking about the possible the repossession of idle land. He would like to know how far have you gone as a ministry on that one. Minister?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not too sure that the second part of the question were part of the cabinet.
It wasn't.
I attempted to answer that.
It wasn't.
So the first one relates to prospects of a good harvest based on the reporter's interaction with some farmers and farmer unions. As government, we are planning on 2 programs for cereals. The first is the modified presidential input scheme, commonly known as Fumputsa, where we were targeting 1.8 million rural households, and we're there to revise the target to 2.2 million households, because we've taken into account the period in farmers. It means that the scheme has been oversubscribed, and of that number, we've trained well over 2.1 million households. In terms of maize, seed, and other seeds, traditional grains, we have given close to 1.8 million households already, and over 70% of households have already received their basal fertilizer. It means this is unprecedented in terms of preparedness. Therefore, the expectation is that we will get a very good harvest from that sector. Secondly, government is also planning on the National Enhanced Productivity Scheme, commonly known as Command. We are targeting 290,000 hectares of maize. As of yesterday, we had contracted 285,000 hectares. As you can see, we are almost on target. Additionally, we're looking at 60,000 hectares of soybean, and we now have contracted 43,000 hectares. And again, this is showing very good progress. And the slight delay in the movement of fertilizers and seed under this program has now been alleviated by the rapid action of the various actors, and at the weekend we saw increased movement of fertilizers and seed to the various depots. So if there are any farmers that think that the inputs are too high, my suggestion is that they join these 2 programs so that they can also benefit. I'm aware that some of the input providers are citing other pricing mechanisms, so I urge farmers and farmer unions to especially interact with the ministry
so that we can redirect farmers accordingly, so that we can plan for a bumper harvest, so that this country can move into food security territory, and because we do have expected better rains. The second aspect of the question relates to downsizing on farms. Let me perhaps just take a moment to correct the notion. We said that in terms of the revised policy guidance to provincial land committees, and through them district land committees, and provincial land committees are chaired by the provincial ministers. That guidance was sent about 3 weeks ago, and we had an interaction with all the ministers of state last week. The guidance relates to 5 categories of land. The first category is multiple farm ownership. The second is abandoned farms. The third is derelict farms. The fourth is underutilized farms. And the fifth is productive farms. We said all productive farms will be left for now as we move to assure this nation of increased productivity. However, those that fall into the categories of multiple farm ownership, abandoned farms, underutilized, and derelict will have those properties being the subject of visits with a view to reorganizing them and giving the many Zimbabweans that are on the waiting list for land. Thank you very much, Chair.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Masuka, for those questions. And then the next question is directed to Acting Minister of Health and Childcare. Blessed Mklanga was just referring to the fact that the World AIDS Day, and he spoke about the shortage of ARVs, and he wanted to know what is being done to make sure that that gap is closed. Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, Blessed, for such a very important question on matters of COVID and then HIV. Of course, COVID is challenging us, but I want to assure you that the COVID pandemic is exclusive in terms of resources from the resources that are for HIV in this country. To this end, I just want to prefix by saying there is no challenge in ARV medicine. Government always does its best to make sure that the progress that we have made already in reducing HIV prevalence in Zimbabwe is safeguarded. And to this end, we have made sure, and we are always making sure, that medicines for ARVs are available. So, although we are in challenging times, there is always a fear that the resources might be diverted to COVID. But I'm saying no, the resources have not been diverted to COVID. The resources are for HIV, and His Excellency, Dr. Edin Nagago was on television last night, giving messages of on the day, on a night before the day when we observe this day of AIDS in the world. And the words are very clear on what we are doing in terms of making sure that the health of Zimbabweans is safeguarded. And Zimbabweans are Zimbabwean. So health is the most important thing. So we are making sure that this is safeguarded. So no fears. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, Professor Murwira. And again, as a follow-up question, Blessed wanted to know the message which was sent by the picture. Blessed, I must say this is a cabinet post-briefing. And if we need to talk about something which happened outside cabinet today, I'm free, I'm your minister, I'm the Minister of Information, and the ministers which you are referring to, we can talk about it. But the message is as clearly put as government says, let's adhere to all control, precautionary and preventative measures. I thank you very much. Then I go to the Mukudzei from Herald. Following the reopening of borders, I think that question, there is a statutory instrument which has just come out, and I'll give it to the minister, the acting minister of health, to talk on it, because it will touch on these things. As I have said, the reopening of the country's borders has been effected, is scheduled today. So he will talk to that statutory instrument. I think you can also touch on, maybe you want as the chairperson to touch on the issues of whether the travelers who will be coming will need to produce certificates. Yes, I know very well that. Yes. I want the Honourable Minister, Acting Minister of Health, to speak to the statutory instrument. And also you can talk about the issues, the question which was asked by Taku, that our travellers supposed to produce certificates. But I know, I just want to say I travelled to Zambia. I took a certificate, a COVID-free certificate, and I came back on Friday, just before leaving Zambia. I had to take another COVID test, a PCR test, so that I come back on Friday evening. Then, Minister?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for questions relating to clarification on what happens at our borders. We have published Statutory Instrument 282 of 2020, which is issued in terms of the Public Health Act. And I will read for clarity what is expected for a person who is visiting Zimbabwe. Subsection 2. With effect from the 1st of December 2020, all of the ports of entry or ports of exit between Zimbabwe and a neighboring country or territory shall be opened, with the effect that the entry or exit of goods and of persons through such port or ports shall be permitted, subject to the restrictions contained in this order, and to the following additional restriction in respect of persons entering Zimbabwe who are not citizens or returning residents, namely that such persons must, at the port of entry, exhibit a COVID-19 free certificate issued not earlier than the previous 48 hours, and to present and not present with symptoms of COVID-19, provided that any such person, one, exhibiting a COVID-19 free certificate issued not earlier than the previous 48 hours shall, if they present with symptoms of COVID-19, be refused entry into Zimbabwe. Not exhibiting the certificate referred to in this subsection shall, even if they do not present with symptoms of COVID-19, be refused entry into Zimbabwe. I just want to end by saying there shall be enforced a curfew beginning at 2200 hours every day, ending at 0600 hours on the following day. This I chose to read directly from the statutory instrument for clarity. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure it was very clear. The professor managed to read it well. I don't know if there are any questions on the statutory instrument which is just read. If not, I think it's very, very clear. Thank you very much, Professor Murwira. And let me just finish off by giving you some of the best news for this country and what how this country is being rated somewhere else. So this is about. The Minister of Home Affairs is here. Yeah. Very good, excellent. So maybe you need to add on the question which was asked was about following the reopening of borders. What has been the day like in our port of entry? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. And I want to thank the journalist for the question. The answer is I don't know. As yet. But I haven't seen a red flag as yet. So I would like to assume that everything is okay, but we do not expect a huge influx. Why am I saying that? Is because if we look at it closely, we have always been open. We have always allowed our citizens to come back. And we'd opened the airspace, which means tourists were coming. So the only increase that we can probably expect is that of private vehicles. And in that case, so we shouldn't expect a huge influx per se, but not as a result of opening today, but maybe as a result of the festive season, which happens every year anyway. So if you look at the logistics at the border, you need the immigration, you need customs, and these two have always been there, and they've always dealt with this influx which takes place during the festive season. The only new normal, which is different, is the pandemic. Hence, the need to facilitate or capacitate rather the health ports, which has been done. So we do not expect a huge influx. Yes, we expect an increase, but nothing out of the ordinary. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister of Home Affairs, Honorable Kazembe, for that. And I'm sure by tomorrow you are free to contact the Minister of Home Affairs to just get the information when it's available to him. Then as I said, these are some of the success stories of Zimbabwe under the Second Republic. This is Zimbabwe's top performance in the Ibrahim Index on African Governance 2020. So according to the Ibrahim Index on African Governance, IIAG, rankings in 2020, Zimbabwe is among the top 5 reformers over the last decade. Zimbabwe recorded significant improvements on the categories of human development, foundation on economic development, and security and rule of law. Zimbabwe is ranked as the most improved country over the decade in the category of foundation for economic development. This category considers public administration, business environment, infrastructure, and rural sector in Zimbabwe. And I just want to say IIAG, which is Ibrahim Index on African Governance, is produced by the Mo Ibrahim Foundation. I thank you sincerely for listening.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to thank the Honorable Chair and the ministers and indeed the members of the media.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Ministers.